Okay, this video is all of health summarized in 5 minutes. And actually there's two parts to this talk. The first part is this slide right here where I will summarize just about all of health in 5 minutes. And then subsequent slides are more of a philosophical perspective. I realize a lot of people are only going to want to watch this slide, but the philosophical perspective is actually my favorite part. But what I'm kind of doing is to make it clear, you can understand the main points of health in 5 minutes, okay? All this stuff about you need to go to have a pre-med education and then a medical school education, then training and residency, a fellowship for the more complex subspecialties. There is some truth in special situations for that, but the common diseases, you don't need any of that. A health coach can watch the videos at my YouTube channel, Dr. McDougall's YouTube channel, VegSource, a couple other really good channels. And they'll know more in 1 week than a doctor who's gone through pre-med, med school, residency, and fellowship. Okay, so what are we talking about? What's the most common cause of death? It's a heart attack. What's a heart attack? A blood clot in an artery of the heart. What causes a blood clot? Well, what is atherosclerosis? Atherosclerosis is a blood clot. And that's been shown by Gregory Sloop and William Roberts and others, the best atherosclerosis pathologists in the whole world. They look at it in a microscope. They say it's a blood clot. You can't tell a blood clot from a atherosclerotic plaque on CT angiogram because they're the same thing. Okay. What is a blood clot? It's a sticking together of red blood cells, of platelets, of plasma proteins, such that they precipitate out of solution in the blood. Okay. That's a blood clot. What causes atherosclerosis and a blood clot? Things that stick red blood cells together, like high-fat diets, high serum uric acid, like from excessive high-fructose corn syrup, high fibrinogen, like from psychological stress, sleep deprivation, caffeine, elevated IgM antibodies in an acute infection. Things that activate fibrinogen, like LPS, LTA, bacterial endotoxins, LPS and LTA. Iron overloaded, we have free iron causing Fenton reactions in the blood and ferrous redox cycling. Okay, what else causes atherosclerosis? Things that injure the artery, things that inhibit endothelial nitric oxide synthase, so you can't make nitric oxide, the vasodilator gas. It's also antiplatelet gas to prevent clotting. And what does that? Hypertension, diabetes, excess dietary sodium, excess serum uric acid, these sorts of things. What causes high blood pressure? Thick blood and vasoconstriction. Well, what makes the blood thick? High-fat diets, excessive serum uric acid, excessive psychological stress, sleep deprivation, caffeine, excessive activation of neutrophils from high-fat diets, and bacterial endotoxins from postprandial endotoxemia due to leaky gut. Platelet activation can be excess dietary sodium, for example, excess dietary fat indirectly. We won't get into that right now. Fibrinogen, dehydration. Okay, what causes vasoconstriction? Excess dietary sodium, excess serum uric acid, lack of the stuff from plants, potassium, magnesium, plant nitrates, lack of antioxidants to counter oxidative stress, excess stress, psychological stress, caffeine, sleep deprivation, because they all elevate cortisol and catecholamines. What causes diabetes? Excessive dietary fats, the main cause. Other causes of hyperlipidemia include obesity, stress, sleep deprivation, caffeine, toxins to pancreas beta cells, like the AL in your water. Isn't that great? What causes cancer? Tissue hypoxia that injures mitochondria. Fried food also can lead to toxic aldehydes that damage pancreatic beta cells, and there's a few other things. What causes cancer? Tissue hypoxia that injures mitochondria. That's the metabolic theory of cancer of Otto Warburg, okay? Nobel Prize winner, 1931. That's associated with high-fat diets, high-sodium diets, the same old problems, thick blood and vasoconstriction. Overactivation of mTOR. What is mTOR? Nutrient-sensing pathway that's activated in increased amounts with animal protein, because animal protein is different than plant protein. It has more leucine, branched-chain amino acid, and methionine. Sulfur-containing amino acid, essential amino acid. High animal protein diets. Excessive estrogenic chemicals increase breast and prostate cancer. Okay. Also immunosuppression, so the immune system's less able to remove cancer cells from the body. Some infections can do that, like IV. Excessive psychological stress, excess dietary fat, including omega-3s. What causes dementia? Decreased blood supply, okay, to the brain. What causes decreased blood supply to the brain? High-fat diets, high-sodium diets, excessive serum uric acid, hypertension, diabetes, atherosclerosis, excessive psychological stress, sleep deprivation, and caffeine. What overstimulates brain cells? Stress, sleep deprivation, caffeine, aspartame, glyphosate, attention deficit pills, amphetamines, etc. What are direct brain toxins? Things like alcohol, opioids because of hypoxia, F-, Al, Hg, iron overload. What are examples of mitochondrial inhibitors? Well, there's tons of mitochondrial inhibitors. There's like over 60 of them, but they will prevent the brain cells from making adequate amounts of ATP to protect themselves from all these problems. SERCA inhibitors are similar because then you can't pump calcium into the endoplasmic reticulum of your brain cells, and you get cytoplasm calcium overload, and that overactivates the brain cell. Okay, what's the best way to minimize all this stuff? Live like Adam and Eve, but keep your indoor heating and plumbing. Eat a low-fat, whole food vegan diet. That means single ingredient foods, 100% organic with no oil. You'll end up taking one supplement, methylcobalamin B12. Our ancestors wouldn't have had to do that because they didn't wash their food so much, and they didn't have so many fertilizers in the soil. Okay, Christian and herbicides and pesticides sprayed on stuff. Christian ethics. You need Christian ethics to make society work. Okay, you don't have to be a Christian, but you have to have Christian ethics in society. Man is created in the image of God, therefore he's part divine, and he's above the animals. You should not abuse him, however weak he may be, okay? And the ideas of, be nice to each other, love thy neighbor, forgive each other, that which you do unto the least of my brethren, you do unto me. You have to have that teaching of Jesus Christus from the Sermon on the Mount, that which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Because otherwise the weak people get abused. There has to be something to protect the weak people, or which is most people, or society is not safe. Okay, you need to do high quality science and healthcare, you have to have Christian ethics. The modern scientific method came from the Catholic Church. There's no way around it. If you read history, that's rather obvious. And without Christian ethics, you really can't do high quality science and healthcare. The reason why healthcare has become a joke and science has become a joke is because big money controls it. And big money just does whatever it wants, all right? And so without Christian ethics, it becomes a farce for making money. Big companies, they own the journals, they own the scientists, they can publish pretty much whatever they want. They can publish the opposite of the truth, and the average, doctor will believe it, okay, because it's in their interest to believe it. If they follow whatever the big name university says about prescribing a drug for such and such a disease, they make money and they can't get in trouble and they go home early, okay? If they start talking about the vegan diet, they don't make any money, they can get in trouble, and they go home late, and they're tired and they're exhausted. So basically, you can take your pick. You can continue with the way of man, high-fat diet, drugs, surgery, endless lying, lies on top of lies, atheism, dictatorship, return of slavery, trafficking, cruelty, beat music, undecipherable lyrics, or you can go the way of God. Okay, the way of God is, the diet of Genesis 1:29. We talked about that. Truth, kindness, respect for Western civilization, melody music with understandable words. Okay, now I'm going to show you the same thing but in pictures, okay? This painting is called The Valley of Tears by Gustave Dore, and Christ is leading the poor, the wretched, and the miserable out of their misery. And it's the only way you're ever going to cure all these diseases, make people healthy, and get people to be nice to each other. That's it. You're either going to go the way of Christ, the way of God, or you're going to continue to live in dictatorships with slavery, with trafficking, with brutality, with cruelty, with endless lying, okay? That's it. I mean, those are really the only two ways to go, okay? And because I've seen these other, like, societies with godless religions, they always end up in a sort of a dictatorship that's brutal, a caste system, and all this other stuff, okay? And then here it is, Adam and Eve. Live like Adam and Eve, but keep your indoor heating and plumbing. Eat your plant foods, be nice to each other, get along with each other, okay? And here's the idea of created in the image of God, Genesis 1:27 of Michelangelo. And there's Eve being brought by God to Adam, and let them be nice and be fruitful and multiply and have a nice family. And if you don't have Christian ethics, what do you have? You end up with this painting, Massacre, of the Innocents by Guido Reni. And basically all the weak people, which is the most people, they have no way to protect themselves. They have no right to free speech. They have no right to privacy. They have no right to property. They have no right to the pursuit of happiness. They have nothing. They're basically livestock owned by the ruler. Okay, and that's what you get unless you have Christian ethics. It's just a fact. And then the next thing that I'm especially concerned about is that they kill all the really smart men. Okay, because they have to get rid of all the super smart men, because we know that stuff is BS, okay? You can't trick, a medical genius like myself into thinking that drugs and surgery are an intelligent way to treat hypertension and diabetes and coronary heart disease. Please, it's stupid, okay? So what they'll do is these societies will just get rid of all the guys. If there's some, jerk of a man who goes around telling the truth to the pros, they're going to get rid of him. The death of Socrates is a pretty good example, okay? And it's more than that. Take a look at what happened in France in the 1790s, okay? They got rid of God for a while, and what did they do? The smartest man in the whole country, Lavoisier, the great scientist, they bumped him off. They did you-know-what to his head, okay? And they did that to 50,000 other people with the you-know-what machine, the guillotine. That's what you get when you don't have God. You get some crazy person, and they just start doing that with people's heads, okay? Okay, and then, what do you get with Christianity? Basically, people try to live a good life. They should. And you want to, when it's time for the last judgment, go before God, Jesus Christo, and say, look, I did my best. I know I screwed up a lot. And hopefully he'll agree with that. He'll say, yeah, you did screw up a lot, but I know you tried hard and you did your best and you did pretty good. And that's what you hope, and everybody tries for that, and the whole society's better off for it, okay? Now, we can get into, we're not going to get into all the philosophical stuff about this, because this is a giant topic. But the point was, you try to live a better life. And like Voltaire had said, I want my doctor and my tailor to believe in God so they do not rob me, okay? And the other joke, I forget who wrote the joke, but they said, what is the difference between a lawyer and a doctor? A lawyer will rob you. A doctor will rob you and K-you-know-what-I-L-L you. So the doctor has to be bound by Christian ethics doesn't have to be Christian, but they should be bound by Christian ethics to do what is right and not just be a conformist, wimpy, ignorant weasel and sell drugs to people when there's better options available.